Hey guys, it's your girl Yem Yem, and I'm coming to you live from the house. Yes. Welcome to Yem's World. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you once again for liking and subscribing and leaving a comment in the comment section and sharing the video. Like I said, if it's been a blessing to you, make sure you share and be a blessing to someone else. So let's get into this video. My last video, I talked a little bit about my second pregnancy, and I talked about how I was getting negative reports all around. From every doctor that I saw that was a part of the practice, and the midwives, they really just didn't have a whole lot of positive reports for me. But I counteracted that with positive confession and prayer. And I just want to make a quick note there. You know, if you get a negative report, that's a great opportunity for God to do a miracle. If you have only positive reports all around, you don't need a miracle. So if you've been getting these negative reports, it's not the time to do a pity party, either for yourself or to have other people pitying you. It's a time to really get serious and, you know, start to positively confess God's word, and trust and await in faith that He's going to do exceedingly abundantly above all that you could ask or think. Okay, so that was that, right? So I, started this new job, and I was 6 months pregnant, and, I was just progressing. I had every intention to pretty much work all the way up to the birth, because I felt a little bit guilty about taking time off beforehand, even though I was entitled to it. But I just felt weird about taking time off. So I was planning on just basically working all the way up, to the birth. And so, I was due exactly 3 months after I started the position. So exactly 3 months later, for my start date, was my due date. And after about 2 months, I worked the whole week. I mentioned last time in my previous video that the Braxton Hicks contractions started to increase, and they started to increase in intensity. They started to become more painful. I mentioned it to the doctor. They said that's normal, but it felt weird. It felt different than the previous one. So I didn't know what to think about it. So one Friday, I come home from work, and all is good. I had some really intense Braxton Hicks contractions at work, but I didn't think anything of it. So I came home, and at that time, my mother-in-law had just come into town, to help with the birth, but she came about a month early. So she had just come into town that day, and I got home, and everything was good, and then suddenly, the contractions started to get more intense. It was like really, really more intense. And earlier that day, my husband told me about the song. It's called Open Up by Dunsi Oyekon. And I listened to, as soon as he told me about the song, my spirit really, really just connected with that song. Even before I heard it, and I was like, I got to listen to this song. I had to listen. So I listened to the song. I only listened to it once while I was at work. And as I heard the words, I'm like, wow, this song is very prophetic. Yes, it was saying open up. I had gotten a negative report from the doctor that was saying my pelvis was too small. And so as I heard this song that said open up, I was decreeing it over my pelvis, and I was decreeing it over my body that yes, my body should open up. And so when I got home, but I was thinking, well, I still got a whole month left, before my due date. So yeah, I was like, yeah, I'm going to start listening to the song, and hopefully that will usher in the opening up. And so I got home that evening, and I started to feel the contractions. They were getting like way more intense than before. And so at some point, I was like literally on the floor. Me and my husband were sitting on the floor. He was like holding me up. My mother-in-law was there, and she was looking at me. She's like, you sure you don't want to go to the hospital? And I'm like, hospital? I'm like, nah, I'm 8 months. I'm 36 weeks. We still got time. So she's like, you sure? She's like, do you think you want to go to the hospital? And I was like, no, I don't want to go to the hospital. Now, one of the doctors had told me, one of the reasons why I didn't want to go to the hospital, because one of the doctors told me that because you've had a previous C-section, as soon as you come into the hospital, we're going to admit you. Like, we're not going to, even if you're way earlier than, you think, we're going to admit you because you've had the C-section. We're not going to take any chances. So I was like, I mean, I'm only 8 months, so I don't want to go there and be admitted, and so I was like, nah. But all the while I'm contracting, things are getting really intense, and that was at around like 10 p.m. It keeps going. 11 p.m., 12 p.m., 1 a.m. or 12 a.m. 1 a.m. And so by about 2 a.m. it's like, okay, I think we might need to go to the hospital. I think it might be time. So we were like, final, and I hadn't eaten anything. I lost my appetite. So again, happened again. I hadn't eaten anything. So, but I wasn't hungry, and so they kept telling me you should eat something. I was just like, I can't. So anyway, I managed to eat a salad and drink a little bit of water before we went in. So we go into the hospital, and they just do a urine test. And they didn't check anything. They just did this urine test. They didn't check the urine. They're just like, what'd you say was going on? They're like, you're probably just dehydrated. They're like, they gave me this pitcher of water. They're like, just drink this. Just drink 2 pitchers of water. You're probably just dehydrated. Drink the water, go home. Like, literally, they did not check. And they threw the urine away. And I was like, okay. Okay, all right, great. I was happy because I didn't have to get admitted into the hospital like I thought. And so we went back home, and the contractions continued, but I was able to get some sleep at that point. So I went to sleep, and I was fine. The next day, this was just Saturday, I actually had a discipleship class, a 6-hour discipleship class that I was supposed to be attending. And I'm like, am I going to be able to get it? Because the contractions started again. So I'm like, am I going to be able to attend? Not sure. But they started again, and then they stopped. And I was feeling better. And I'm like, okay, I think I waited a couple hours. I'm like, okay, I think I'll be able to go. And so I said, okay, let me go and get dressed. As soon as I stood up from the bed and took a shower, I was like, oh, no, not happening. Not at all. 6 hours? No, it's not going to work. So I sat back down, I finished getting dressed, and I just went back to sleep. And the rest of that day, I literally just laid on the bed. I don't remember eating anything. I probably did. But I just laid on the bed, and I didn't really feel the contractions anymore, actually. So I felt pretty good, but I was glad I stayed at home, and I just kind of chilled for the rest of the day. So at night, once again, at maybe about 3 a.m., 4 a.m., I started to feel the contractions again. But this time, it was like clockwork. It was every 10 minutes. And I would feel the contraction. It would make me want to have to use the bathroom. So I would stand up, go to the bathroom, but as soon as I would bend my legs, it would just make things get way more intense. And so it made me want to use the bathroom, but then it was just a cycle. And so, but it would, once the contraction passed, then I would go back to sleep, and then 8 minutes later, I'd be back up again, and I literally did this for 3 hours, like straight, every 10 minutes, like clockwork. I would get up, go to the bathroom, feel like I have to use the bathroom, not use the bathroom, and then let the contraction pass, go back to sleep. And those 6 minutes, those 6 minutes in between were like heaven. But as soon as I would get up again with the contractions, it just was like super intense. And so this is now a Sunday morning, time for us to go to church. And so my husband's like, you think you'll be able to go to church? And I'm like, I should be able to. But actually that Sunday, our youth group was taking over the service. And I was going to be leading part of the service. So I'm like, I can't really miss it. I'm going to be leading. I'm actually going to be leading 2 parts of the service. Like, I really don't want to miss it. Let's just go for it. I'm like, the car ride is going to be weird, but okay, let's do it. So I go, and luckily, I did feel the contractions in the car, but I was able to manage it. So I get to church, and we have a prayer session before the service starts. I'm leading that. I lead the prayer session, people are like looking at me because I'm moving a lot slower now than normal. And people are like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. So I leave the prayer session, and then we go into the service, and I'm also taking part of the service. And so somebody's like, are you sure you want to lead that part? Like, you don't have to, because it was me and another girl. She's like, why don't you just let the other lady do it? And I'm like, oh, okay. And, at first I was thinking maybe I should just chill. And I'm like, no, I'm going to do it. So I go up, it's my time to come and lead that part of the service. And I go up and I speak with confidence. Like, before I went up, I had a contraction. And I'm like, I hope I don't have a contraction up there, because, honey, that's not going to be cute. So I go up and we do this activity. I lead this part of the service, and I'm bold, I'm confident, I'm speaking, and all the while, no contractions, and I'm able to get through that part, and I go back and sit down. After that, I went to the bathroom, and I was just in the bathroom for the rest of the service. Now, mind you, after the service ended, well, actually, before the service ended, my friend actually preached, and she made an altar call at the end of her sermon. And she said, I can't even remember exactly what the altar call is, but she just made the altar call. And I went up at that moment and I said, Lord, I don't know what's going on right now. I'm only 8 months. I don't think this is labor, but whatever it is, take control. I literally surrender to you. And I said that in all sincerity. I said, Lord, I surrender. Do your thing. Whatever you want to do, do it. So after the service, I am actually supposed to take an exam for this discipleship class, 60-question exam for this discipleship class. So I go up and I start taking the exam. The proctor of the exam, she's like, in the middle of the test, I like get up and I'm like, okay. Every 10 minutes, I'm like, okay, oh. And she gets up and she calls my husband over. She's like, I'm not sure that she needs to complete this. Like, why don't you just let her go? And I'm like, nah, I can do it. I can finish it. I'll just, work through the contractions. And so I finally get through the exam, finish the exam, and I walk downstairs. So at that point, I'm finally walking out of the church, and on my way out, I see 3 ladies, and they look at me, and they're like, you need to go to the hospital. And they tell my husband, take her to the hospital. Go straight to the hospital. Go to the hospital. They're like, look at you. They're like, you need to go to the hospital. So I'm like, okay. But in my head, I'm thinking, I don't need to go to the hospital. I'm only 8 months. 36 weeks. I don't need to go. So anyway, but I don't make any comments. I just get into the car, and then we're like, okay, let's go to the hospital. So we start driving, and honestly, that drive I was like, and that, I've seen all these videos of people having babies in cars, and I was like, ooh, I hope that's not going to be me. So I'm like, ooh, and it's a 35-minute car ride to the hospital. So somehow, I don't know how, I made it through that car ride. So we get to the hospital, we pull up to valet, but nobody's there. So my husband just parks the car, and I'm like, okay, let's go. And so he brings up a wheelchair for me, and I sit down in the wheelchair, and I'm like, as soon as I sit down, for whatever reason, anytime like I bend down, that just made the contraction way worse. So every time so as I sat down on the wheelchair, I'm like, no, I can't. Okay, let me walk it out. It would start the contraction, so I'd have to get up and walk away to kind of walk out the contraction. And so I would do that, and then the contraction would go, and I'm like, okay, I think I can do it now. So I'll sit back down on the wheelchair, and I'm like, oh, no, I gotta walk. I literally did this probably like 10 times. And then and I was walking away. As I would walk away from the hospital. And then at some point, my husband's like, why don't you just walk into the hospital? Why don't we just forget about this wheelchair? And I was like, all right, fine. I think subconsciously, I didn't want to be there, so maybe that's why I was walking away. So anyway, I walk into the hospital finally. We're all walking, and we actually have a friend who was visiting us as well. She was there, and so we're all walking in. And the funniest thing happens. So I'll walk through the doors, and the security guys, and I'm like looking down. obviously my stomach, visibly pregnant. I'm like looking at like my head, like everything, obviously I'm like clearly in labor. And I'm looking down and the security guy says, "Are you here to see a patient?" And I'm like, "What?" I didn't even answer him. I just kept doing my thing. So we walk in, and we came directly from church, so I was still dressed in my church clothes. And they're like, "Oh, you guys are you're the best dressed looking couple we've ever seen." And, having a baby. And so we're like, but this whole time, I don't realize that I'm actually in labor. Like, I think that maybe, I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I'm like, how am I going to survive this for another 4 weeks? This is really intense. So I go in, and they're like, okay, we need to get a urine sample. So, I get undressed but I just know as soon as I bend down, because from my previous experience, bending down just really doesn't work. I knew that urine sample was not happening. And on the drive over, I felt something dropping. And I was like, I don't know what that is. So when I went into the bathroom and I was going to try my best to give a urine sample, I felt something drop. Like, I was like, what is that? I don't know what that is. And then I'm like, I feel something. I don't know. So I told my husband I couldn't take a look. He looks and he's like, it's white. I was like, is it the baby's head? Like, I don't know what's going on. He's like, it's white. I'm like, white? I don't know. So we call in the nurses. The nurses come in and they're like, it's her water bag. It's her water bag. And they just like, there's this whole frenzy. They're like, get her over to the labor delivery room. Get her over, blah, blah, blah. And so they like wheel me over. It was hilarious because I wasn't wearing any bottoms, but I had to go across the hallway. And they're like, like, clear out the hallway. Don't let anybody go past. And they like wheel me over to the other room, and they put me on the bed, and they check me. They're like, you're 9 centimeters dilated. And it's just like all these frenzy and all these nurses coming in, and then they're like, and then this lady just sticks her hand. So they break my water, and then she like sticks her hand up, and I'm like, I'm like, that hurts, guys, that hurts. And then she's like, I gotta get my hand in there while you're having a contraction. And I'm like, but that hurts. And so they check, and they're like, are you sure she's 9 centimeters dilated? So somebody else comes, and they check, and they're like, yeah, she's 9 centimeters dilated. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I have like hours and hours of this. This is like super painful. Like, as soon as they broke my water, like, it was a whole new level. And I was like, I can't believe I'm gonna have hours and hours of this. I don't know if I'm gonna make it. I know I said I wanted natural. I know I said I didn't want no interventions and no medications, but I don't know if I can do this. And this is all going through my head. And then she's like, you're 9 centimeters dilated. She's like, do you feel like pushing? And as soon as she said, do you feel like pushing? I felt like pushing. And I'm like, ah! I was screaming. And I pushed once. I pushed twice. And then she's like, push again. So I like push again. 4th time, baby. It felt like a torpedo. I just felt her go out like whoosh. She just came out like whoosh. Now, mind you, my doctor was not there. So it was just, this random doctor that was there, because they paged her, but she was on call, but she had went home because she had just done a previous C-section. So she went home to rest. So they paged her as soon as I came in, but she was not there. So the baby comes out whoosh, like a torpedo, and whatever, blah, all the craziness. And so as soon as the baby comes out, like 2 minutes, 3 minutes later, my doctor walks in. And then she's like, you had the baby? You had it? You did it naturally? She's like, wow, you guys said so. Yeah, you and your husband said so. You and your husband said so. And it was crazy, because it was like, I was so happy that she wasn't there, because the way she was talking was she was gonna probably somehow force me to have a C-section. Like, if she was there, yeah, I probably would have ended up with a C-section. So it reminded me of that scripture, and I'll get to that in the next video. But this was my birth experience of the second baby. It was crazy, and it was awesome. And the whole time I had no clue that I was in labor and I was actually about to have a baby. So this was a huge, huge, huge testimony, a huge, 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 just awesome experience. But in my next video, I'll talk a little bit about all that I learned, like how I saw all these things playing out and how God really just took all the control. So that's the story, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, leave a comment in the comment section. Did you like this story? Was it interesting? Was it funny? Alright, leave a comment in the comment section. Share the video if it was a blessing to you. Alright, see you next time, guys. Later.